I, on behalf of Beyond Law CLC, welcome you all in our continuum of series of webinars, what we have done so far. And the response given by the participants, not only on the YouTube, Facebook, as well on the platform, encourages us to bring the best speakers pan-India and world. And in that pursuit, we requested Justice A. Muhamed Mustaque, a judge of the Kerala High Court, to give an insight on a topic of the transitional law. And when we talk of transitional law, a common question which keeps in the mind is, what is that? Then one comes to know that it is, in fact, which transcends or processes orders, and it is not formally enacted. And they're also in type of informal forms of law. And a topic which is quite close to Justice A. Muhamed Mustaque, and it is a facet which, as a student of law or as a professional or a judicial officer and a judge, one tends to learn from a person who is an expert in this field. And if one goes to the resume of Justice Muhamed Mustaque, one would find he has a flair to do different things. And as it's commonly said that successful people don't do different things, they do it differently. He did his master's in space and telecommunication law, then private international law at Hague Academy International Law, advanced course on e-commerce and intellectual properties from WIPO. He's a trained mediator from a European team and also by MCPC of Supreme Court of India. And he has many international publications. And once we find that a person has knowledge not only of national but international aspects, therefore we speak on a topic of a transitional law. We requested Justice Mustaque Muhammad, who has been kind enough, and those who have been connected with us since ages, that is when we started off the webinar series, you know that when we were in the baby steps of the Beyond Law CLC, it was under the patronage of judges like Justice Mustaque. We started taking, I cannot say the giant steps, but at least steps which are no into the toddler's part, because we have got a good subscribers of YouTube, as the webinars are being well received on the Facebook. So much so amongst us, today we have TVSS Somala Jalu, a judge of the Andhra Pradesh High Court. It speaks volumes of the knowledge which not only in Kerala but pan-India and pan-world is well received. Without taking much time, since there were certain glitches when we were about to start the webinar, I will request Honorable Mr. Justice Muhamed Mustaque to take the webinar forward.
Thank you, Vikas. My esteemed brother Soumya Jalu. I'm audible, right, Vikas?
Right, sir. Right. Yes.
We are all, though advanced with all using technology, but still you are lagging behind in the network. Still troubles us. Whenever we try to connect, we try to disconnect as well. My esteemed brothers and sisters who's listening to me, who may be tuned to hear this presentation to YouTube later, I thought of addressing you on this topic for a simple reason. I always wonder the legal fraternity as a community still remain as a backward, though world has progressed much in the technology in terms of science. The only community which has never tapped the opportunities around is the legal fraternity. Somewhere I saw somebody's trolling, the legal community is always 300 years back. This is reality. When a doctor comes out of the medical institution or the college where he studied for medical course, he has a definite plan. He may pursue his career as a professional, medical professional in a particular path on which he has acquired as a knowledge and expertise. But lawyers are always born with a perplexed mind. The moment he steps out of law colleges, he has no idea what to do next. No doubt, I find a lot of youngsters have no courage enough to decide the path which to be followed, especially those who are coming out of national law schools, etc. You have now all the information on the net which would guide you to pursue the career. But still, as a community, by and large, have not chosen to tap the opportunities around. This is how we have to portray ourselves, whether it be in the dispute resolution or elsewhere where expertise is required to be applied, we are lagging behind. Well, when you're talking about transnational legal order, in fact, my idea is to speak on the subject with connecting with the technology. Is obviously one idea I have a mind. People should think differently and start thinking differently, at least enable a new generation to tread a new path, especially those who are in the law colleges or those who are in the threshold of their career and as a legal professional. The place where Mr. Vikas I belong, have a lot of immigrant population. We have a lot of problems related to them, whether related to the marriage or some other connected. Most of them we have no idea on how to handle those issues because we have not learned much in the private international law. Our schools, law institutes hardly cater the education related to these subjects. Even if there is a topic, it is beyond the purpose of, it is not going beyond the purpose of a scheme of examination. The very meaning of transnational, it means beyond our national boundaries. Now, globe has turned as a village, but lawyers still, legal professionals still remain in the village. They are not able to travel beyond the sphere in which their activity is bound. When nation state came into existence, especially during the 17th century, all the sovereign asserted their authority over the subjects. This is how national law came into existence. It shows, I mean, especially in the Europe, the Roman Empire came to an end. National states came to existence. They tried to create a new relationship among the members of the globe. So both sphere, in domestic as well as international sphere, they have a different approach. Now the national laws are so dear to the sovereign, it cannot be compromised. The lawyers are learned their acumency are in relation to the national laws, particularly dictated by the sovereign. Through the curriculum, this is imparted to them. But we saw a changing shift in the scenario. Though national state has come to be recognized, as I said, in the 17th century, we saw a complete shift, especially in Indian context from 1919 onwards, on onset of liberalization policies. It is from where onwards we started, I mean, the we started to face the crisis related to the identity as a legal profession. The world has now, as I said, has shrunk, has become a big global village where new relations start to come into existence, especially through the business. Now, just speaking about the kind of opportunity that is created by liberalization, especially in industrial trade-related matters. It is where we have to think about creating a transnational legal order, which would ultimately enable lawyers to have an opportunity to work for expertise. Now, we had a closed economy until the 90s. Our economy worked on the 5-year plans, which never given, because it's, older generation knows it worked on a license rush, and it's very closed. It's entangled in the bureaucracy, and it hardly allowed any imports. The custom, the tariff, they all fixed in such a way where to destroy an import, because it to ensure that the trade balance is remaining intact. Now, after the opening of market, lifting the barrier, lifting the barriers, it gave plenty an opportunity for the lawyers to tap expertise in an area which hitherto they are unknown to them. The WTO was, we became a member of the country, our country became the member of the WTO. Then we came into terms of the host of agreements of the WTO. Though GATT was in existence as a predecessor of WTO, because we hardly an opportunity to enter into such kind of agreement until we enter into a regime of WTO. This gave an opportunity for a corporate lawyers practicing in an area of limited field to come in terms with the transnational international law. The government also need kind of assistance from legal professionals who are expertise in the different fields. So government also sought the assistance of the lawyers in drafting, raising the grievances before WTO regime, etc. WTO also has got its own unique dispute resolutions, where the government which takes up such issues and trash out such disputes in the forum provided under WTO, which gives an opening for some of the lawyers, at least in India, to have kind of an exposure in transnational legal order. But confining to this practice, hardly we tap this opportunity around, which in fact opened a gateway for the lawyers. We remain aloof. We confined our practice as a litigation lawyer, except certain transaction lawyers who worked on corporate laws, etc. We have not developed any attempt at a concentrated effort to foray into transnational transactions or develop or promote business relatable to transactional legal order. And if you look at the world around, you find many of the institutions have came into existence to promote transnational legal order. The WTO itself is in a regime which promotes transnational legal order, but they confine to the intergovernmental relationships. Similarly, United Nations also made a lot of attempts to promote transnational legal order, through like their agencies like Untitled, which gave a model law on Arbitration Conciliation Act. It is that agency, in fact, initiated the Convention on International Sale of Goods. I think we are also making an attempt to have a model law based on international sale of convention, based on a Convention on International Sale of Goods, which is held in Vienna. The UN also have an agency called United Nations Trade Development, which is essentially to bridge the gap between the different states, developed and non-developed nations. These are institutional mechanisms evolved around the world to create a transnational legal order. Similarly, some of the developed countries, like especially in the Europe, they promoted organization called OECD, Organization for Economic and Cooperation Developments. They chartered many programs for connecting the nations, and including for including to handle the issues arising from human rights violation by multinational corporations. Of course, India is not a party to OECD, but there are many such organizations came into existence which lay down the kind of foundation for transnational legal orders. But these are basically and fundamentally an institutional arrangements which works intergovernmental sphere. There are agencies like International Telecommunication Union. It is the International Telecommunication Union, in fact, lay down our standards of telecommunication networks, etc. 2G, 3G, 4G, and 5G. They also have a register of the spectrum allocations. So they maintained a legal order to maintain a relationship based on law related to telecommunications as well as space. So these institutional structure always, had a focus on governmental function related to the transnational legal order. But this gave up plenty of opportunity for business to open up in a different area. These opportunities are immense. These opportunities, of course, as a lawyer, we remain, because we are we have been given a license to practice only in a country. We are hardly able to use the potential that is opened up through the lifting of our trade barriers. Perhaps we have to conceive a concept or formalize the concept of transnational legal practitioners. That is not far to come. Because I'm audible, right? Is there any issue of?
No, it's audible. It's audible. Except for the fact, sir, if you want, just slightly a camera can be put down so that you come in the center of the frame.
No, because of this iPad,
No, it's fine. It's perfect.
Yeah, perfect, right?
Yes. And if the volume slightly could be higher, just check it out, because slightly it is on the lower side. Slightly, not fully, but it's volume.
Volume.
Is that the full?
Yes, is it?
Yes.
Yes. One area that could have given impetus for growth is a private international. Private international deals with an issue of foreign element. But initially, the private international was conceived to apply in areas of the disputes where it is involved, it is having a foreign element. We don't have a codified private international. It's scattered in a different statute like CPC, Indian Succession Act, etc. there are some countries is having a codified private international. The approach of private international law essentially was to apply foreign element in it if anything is brought in a domestic jurisdiction. If domestic jurisdiction has to apply anything related to foreign element, they apply the private international law. But today, the private international law has another facet, the transformative character of private international law, which we hardly talk about the transformative character of private international. Like any other system of law, the private international also can be transformative of the new world order, especially based on the trade and economic, especially related to the economic and trade fronts. But our capability to address this issue is very, I would say, very minimal in the sense we don't have any professional expertise to explore the possibility of using private international law as a transformative for creating a new legal order around us. It is in this background I thought of addressing this subject, I mean, especially related, using the technology, which could be perhaps one way of addressing all the gamut of the issues under the transnational legal order. Now, if you look at around the world, how the things are dictated, for example, you know, we have a food law now, the food safety security law. We have a product element regs, the kind of standards prescribed for the foods. Similarly, in sphere of electronic equipments and gadgets, there are standards being prescribed by world bodies like IEEE, etc. So on, so you will find so many agencies are involved in the world, creating a new world order. They just try to exploit the opportunities given to them after the lifting of the barriers of trade. Similarly, the lawyers also could have utilized this opportunity through the private international instruments if they make an attempt to create a new world order. The lawyers always wait an opportunity to come to them instead of that make an attempt to create an opportunity based on the circumstances now available around them. This is where the real dilemma lawyers face. Now the technology itself would enable lawyers to tap this opportunity. The technology can assist lawyers in two ways. One is the managing the data. So using this data, the lawyers would be in a position to create new instruments. Of course, it should must have a kind of backing of private international law. Secondly, artificial intelligence, the cognitive skills. The machine learning machine would provide kind of cognitive answers to the problem they face. These are the two areas where the possibility and opportunity for the lawyers to develop themselves into transnational legal order. As I said, transnational legal order essentially refers to beyond the boundaries, beyond national boundaries. So therefore, technology itself is having a ramification across the globe. It's a potential game changer for the lawyers as well. I'll take you to the couple of videos which would give an idea what I am attempting to convey to you. Is it audible?
audible? Yeah,
Yes.
now it's started.
As we've been talking about, the blockchain is like another layer to the internet that enables secure, trusted records and transactions between people who may not otherwise trust each other. The trust is in the technology, computer code and mathematics, rather than people and centralized institutions. In this respect, people sometimes talk about the blockchain as a trust machine in its capacity to enable a network where trust is created by design. It's built into the system automatically. Because the blockchain creates a trusted database, it can function as a record of value storage and exchange. These records of value and transactions may be called ledgers. Since ancient times, ledgers have formed the backbone to our economies, to record contracts and payments for the buying and selling of goods or the exchange of assets like property. These ledgers started out as records in stone, clay tablets and papyrus, and later paper as they evolved into the ledger books supporting modern accounting. These ledgers enabled the formation of currencies, trade, lending, and the evolution of banking. Over the last couple of decades, though, these records have moved into the digital realm, as whole rooms of people working to maintain accounts have been replaced by digital computers, which have made possible the complex global economic system we live in. Today, this record-keeping system is once again being revolutionized as these ledgers are shifting to a global network of computers which is cryptographically secured, fast and decentralized, what we call distributed ledger or distributed ledger technology, DLT for short. A distributed ledger can be described as a ledger of any transactions or records supported by a decentralized network from across different locations and people, eliminating the need of a centralized authority. All the information on the ledger is securely and accurately stored using cryptography and can be accessed using keys and cryptographic signatures. Any changes or additions made to the ledger are reflected and copied to all participants in a matter of seconds or minutes. The participants at each node of the network can access the recordings shared across the network and can own an identical copy of it. At the same time, these networks make constantly available for examination a full audit trail of information history, which can be traced back to the moment when a piece of information was created, and every participant in the network can get simultaneous access to a common view of the information. These ledgers can be used for the recording, tracking, monitoring, and transacting of all forms of assets. All asset registries, inventories and exchanges, including every area of economics, finance and currencies, physical assets such as cars and houses, and intangible assets such as votes, ideas, health data, reputation, etc. In this case, the blockchain can serve as a public record repository for whole societies, including the registration of all documents, events, identity and assets. In this system, all property could become smart property. This is the notion of encoding every asset to the blockchain with a unique identifier such that the asset can be tracked, controlled, and exchanged on the blockchain. For example, distributed ledgers could be used to replace or supplement all existing intellectual property management systems, as they can register the exact content of any digital asset, such as a file, image, health record, or code, to the ledger and give it a unique identifier in the form of the hash values that we discussed earlier. There are two main classes of distributed ledger: public ledgers and permission ledgers. The former type is maintained by public nodes and is accessible to anyone. Bitcoin is a well-known example of a public blockchain where anyone can read the chain, anyone can make legitimate changes, and anyone can write a new block into the chain. Ripple is an example of a permission blockchain where the creators of the network determine who may act as transaction validators on that network. Distributed ledger platforms in each category have their own unique features. Some are designed for specific types of application, and others for more general use. For instance, in the Corda DLT platform, which is a consortium of more than 70 of the world's largest financial institutions, the sharing of individual ledger data is limited to parties with a legitimate need to know, which is not the case for public platforms. DLT technology can have a powerful disintermediation effect, as data can be put directly onto the shared database by the nodes in the network. There is no longer need for a centralized organization to provide this service. A developer can create a DLT on a blockchain and use public-private key cryptography to give people secure storage space on that ledger, allowing people to own their own data, which creates a very different scenario to the world we live in today. Currently, centralized organizations like Google and Facebook suck up all of the little bits of data we leave behind us and use it to serve us customized advertisements from which they create their revenue. This results in a huge power imbalance within society, where centralized organizations, armed with teams of mathematicians and computer scientists, use mountains of data to influence people's behavior towards purchasing the products of their advertisers. Data that is a very valuable asset in an information society and of critical importance to tackling major societal challenges is being used against us in many ways, creating a stumbling block that societies are becoming increasingly aware of. In a world of distributed ledgers, people have their own little databases on the blockchain.
So we are unmuting you. Yes, sir.
In the meanwhile, a question has come from Ram Prasad. As you rightly pointed out, the concept of nation state as a post-Treaty of Westphalia. In this context, any person born is born into this world and not born into a particular nation state. More importantly, his right to life and his experience cannot be restricted to the nation state he is born into. Can you comment on this, please? Very very important, relevant question is asked. What is the relevance of a nation state? Is there something is we need not to ponder much, in the sense if we are in the geographically bounded, live in a geographically bounded area with a political sovereign who's taking care of us. Now, no doubt there are certain things which is quite dear to the sovereign, which is related to socio-cultural matters. But today in economic affairs, there can't be any restriction in a sense. What all the restrictions now that has been lifted. But how far that can be accommodated when, especially in a countries were governed by constitutional scheme, is it purely a matter, is a political question rather than a legal question. Because even though we are living in a world that has become a global village, still our constitution matters for us. So in that sense, our right to life and experience still has to be contended with within the constitutional bounds. Mr. Ramprasad, if you want to ask the supplemental question on this, you can ask.
Do I unmute him?
Yeah, you can unmute him, because Europe also now is slowly moving forward, kind of a nation states without much boundary. That's why they have a.
So we are unmuting him.
Yeah. Ramprasad, if you want, you can ask any supplemental question on this.
So he's not unmuting himself, or he has to unmute himself. Mr. Ramprasad, you will have to unmute yourself. Meanwhile, we take the question of Praveen. He says, in case mobile recording tested by a private lab, is report of the lab itself sufficient and admissible without oral evidence of examiner and lab testing engineer?
I think it's basically a matter related to the appreciation of the evidence.
It's already signed, I think. Okay. Fine.
Okay. Now I just show you the video which clearly
Fine.
demonstrated the scope of using distributed ledger technology
Okay, I'll
for
thank
data
this.
maintenance.
Okay.
The distributed technology, in fact, would be more useful in international transactions, especially more related to the export, import, etc. There are a lot of instruments being used in international business. The ledger technology is involved. It is structured based on a private international law understanding. Certainly, it can create a lot of impetus in the international economy and boosting the international trade. But this is something which has to be shouldered by the lawyers, the community themselves, to develop such instruments. And I just show you this distributed ledger technology as a possibility of using this technology in the environment of private international law for creating international instruments, etc., even including the contract and the agreements. That is one possibility using the distributed ledger technology. You know that many of you have heard about cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency is based on the blockchain technology. Blockchain technology is a part of distributed ledger technology. So this is a tamper-proof. Nobody can tinker it, and it can itself generate a big impact in the business scenario of international business scenario. Now, world financial institutions require certain kind of instruments to protect their interest. Perhaps this kind of technology is deployed will necessarily protect their interest as well. So the possibility of using this kind of technology, as I said, with the aid of private international law, would give a lot of opportunity for the legal professionals and legal lawyers to foray into a transnational legal order and create a new environment for the business and trade. I'll show you one more video again on the use of the blockchain.
Many people think of blockchain as the technology that powers Bitcoin. While this was its original purpose, blockchain is capable of so much more. Despite the sound of the word, there's not just one blockchain. Blockchain is shorthand for a whole suite of distributed ledger technologies that can be programmed to record and track anything of value, from financial transactions to medical records or even land titles. You might be thinking, we already have processes in place to track data. What's so special about blockchain? Let's break down the reasons why blockchain technology stands to revolutionize the way we interact with each other. Reason number one, the way it tracks and stores data. Blockchain stores information in batches called blocks that are linked together in a chronological fashion to form a continuous line, metaphorically, a chain of blocks. If you make a change to the information recorded in a particular block, you don't rewrite it. Instead, the change is stored in a new block, showing that X changed to Y at a particular date and time. Sound familiar? That's because blockchain is based on the centuries-old method of the general financial ledger. It's a non-destructive way to track data changes over time. Here's one example. Let's say there was a dispute between Anne and her brother Steve over who owns a piece of land that's been in the family for years. Because blockchain technology uses the ledger method, there is an entry in the ledger showing that Anne first owned the property in 1900. when Adam sold the property to Dave in 1930, a new entry was made in the ledger, and so on. Every change of ownership of this property is represented by a new entry in the ledger, right up until Anne bought it from their father in 2007. Anne is the current owner, and we can see that history in the ledger. Now, here's where things get really interesting. Unlike the age-old ledger method, originally a book, then a database file stored on a single system, blockchain was designed to be decentralized and distributed across a large network of computers. This decentralizing of information reduces the ability for data tampering and brings us to the second factor that makes blockchain unique. It creates trust in the data. Before a block can be added to the chain, a few things have to happen. First, a cryptographic puzzle must be solved, thus creating the block. The computer that solves the puzzle shares the solution to all of the other computers on the network. This is called proof of work. The network will then verify this proof of work, and if correct, the block will be added to the chain. The combination of these complex math puzzles and verification by many computers ensures that we can trust each and every block on the chain. Because the network does the trust building for us, we now have the opportunity to interact directly with our data in real time. And that brings us to the third reason blockchain technology is such a game changer. No more intermediaries. Currently, when doing business with one another, we don't show the other person our financial or business records. Instead, we rely on trusted intermediaries, such as a bank or lawyer, to view our records and keep that information confidential. These intermediaries build trust between the parties and are able to verify, for example, that, yes, Anne is the rightful owner of this land. This approach limits exposure and risk, but also adds another step to the exchange, which means more time and money spent. If Anne's land title information was stored in a blockchain, she could cut out the middleman, her lawyer, who would ordinarily confirm her information with Steve. As we now know, all blocks added to the chain have been verified to be true and can't be tampered with, so Anne can simply show Steve her land title information secured on the blockchain. Anne would save considerable time and money by cutting out the middleman. This type of trusted peer-to-peer interaction with our data can revolutionize the way we access, verify, and transact with one another. And because blockchain is a type of technology and not a single network, it can be implemented in many different ways. Some blockchains can be completely public and open to everyone to view and access. Others can be closed to a select group of authorized users, such as your company, a group of banks, or government agencies. And there are hybrid public-private blockchains too. In some, those with private access can see all the data, while the public can see only selections. In others, everyone can see all the data, but only some people have access to add new data. A government, for example, could use a hybrid system to record the boundaries of Anne's property and the fact that she owns it while keeping her personal information private. Or it could allow everyone to view property records but reserve to itself the exclusive right to update them. It is the combination of all these factors, decentralizing of the data, building trust in the data, and allowing us to interact directly with one another and the data that gives blockchain technology the potential to underpin many of the ways we interact with one another. But, much like the rise of the internet, this technology will bring with it all kinds of complex policy questions around governance, international law, security, and economics. Here at the Center for International Governance Innovation, we seek to bring trusted research that will equip policymakers with the
So look at the technology, how it is advanced. The way in which can it manage the data around. Just compare a situation like this. We have a Foreign Marriage Act in India, where if an Indian wants to marry a foreigner, the notice has to go the consulate or embassy in the foreign country. That foreign country has to get all the details of the foreigner, whether it's a single or not. All exercises to be done. Suppose world all maintains a marriage register through a blockchain technology. What would happen? simply you can verify the details of such person through online. Is it not possible? It's very easy kind of technology. But what we need is a kind of law which supports the technology use. That's where the brain of the lawyers has to work. The ingenuity of the lawyers has to invest on those areas. Another example, think about power of attorney being executed outside India. When you bring the power of attorney to India, you need to legalize those power of attorney. You have to go to the embassy. A lot of formality has to be complete. If you can, through this kind of technology, you can maintain a register of the power of attorney executed elsewhere. It's simple for you to ensure the credibility. So there is a plenty of opportunity for the lawyers using this technology to create a new world order. Similarly, think about execution of the will by a person who lives in a foreign country. If you use this technology, the credibility can be ensured. So there are plenty of opportunities. I just cited certain examples because it comes to the day-to-day basis before us. But there are plenty of opportunity for changing this entire world by using the technology. But a technology itself cannot be implemented. As in this presentation itself goes last question, it will raise a lot of policy questions. Yes, a lot of policy questions being raised. But that can be answered only through the legal instruments. Who has to develop these legal instruments? The legal brains. We have to develop these legal instruments for recognition, for all, or acceptance of all. There are the agencies who are working in private international, like UNIDROIT, A conferences. They're developing instruments and conventions where the government agree and for adoption. And based on that, of course, it has become part of the domestic law. But other than there are no initiatives coming from the lawyer community, particularly use this potential opportunity using this instrument changing the world order. Like the founder of the Uber changed the entire world, create a simple platform for all automotive to be controlled through a software without owning a single automotive. He became the largest operator of automotive. Here in BB, become the world's largest real estate without owning a single real estate. Alibaba, without much inventories, he became the largest wholesale and retail supplier. So technology is there everywhere. But point is that whether we are in a position to tap that, use this technology and use it to create a legal order. That is a question being posed to you. It is for the lawyers to develop the instruments. The government and international body only can think about certain areas where it requires intergovernmental involvement. Beyond that, in a day-to-day basis, which is to be addressed, that can be only addressed through the kind of initiative that has to come from the lawyer community. So transnational legal order, because transnational legal order itself is a big subject which it deals with so many of issues, including human rights, bankruptcy. There are so many areas in climate that is also addressed through transnational legal order. That is not my idea. My idea is to convey the message to the lawyer community. There is a potential for you to use this new emerging world order through the technology. It is for the lawyer community to tap. So with this word, I conclude. I open for any questions. Yeah, unmute.
Srinivas says, sanguine visa to travel and euro currency interchangeable within those nations is a way forward. Cool. And by Dr. Kantaraj, he says, if this technology can be implemented, India hopes that half of our litigation would end. Policy decision is required from us. Then he further says that cost should also be looked into because use of this technology, the time is saved.
Cost should be looked into because of use of because cost, I think, will become irrelevant in the sense if there is a potential user for this. because this is, you can't confine to a national geographical boundary, the use of technology. It goes beyond. Especially, I just said, I cited an example of maintaining an international family register. Suppose all the lawyer community, influence all the world governments and asking them to adopt a world family register. It's quite possible through this technology. Is it not?
Yes, sir. Like in Haryana, they've started it off in the same fashion that the entire family, like Aadhaar was an individual, now they're also going about with the family registration, that you know how many members are there, what are the males, females. Just like what we had in originally the ration card, we can say it's more like a digitalized like that. Undoubtedly, like you were saying, that the lawyers have to seek an opportunity. Like in an MBA class, they are always told that a person was sent to an area where no one was wearing the shoes. One said that when man was sent as a marketing manager, he said, go look there. He said that no one is wearing the shoes. He came back. But the other person goes to that same place. He says that you send as many shoes you want because everybody is a barefooted. I can sell as many shoes are there. So it's only whether you see a half glass empty or a half glass full.
Yeah, exactly. The conceptual issue is a big issue for us. See, we are entering into a forum. The world with a perplexed mind, as I said in the initial stage itself. Like because our law institute or law schools or law university are not in a position to give an idea because they have limitations of formulating the syllabus because it is dictated by bar council. They can't go beyond certain areas. So unless then autonomy is given to law schools to develop their own curriculum, because interdiscipline is a need of hour. You have to, law schools also should be taught about the technology, developing technology. Similarly, engineers also should be taught about what kind of a law should to support the technology. So it is a time for us to think in interdiscipline manner to develop the nation.
Even otherwise, they say it is how you look. One can think NO is no, and one thinks NO means next opportunity. The question is only of the mindset, and one, if we start looking upon in a better perspective, I feel that, and the way you expressed on the blockchain technology, crypto technology, they're all things which if one learns with the flux of time, and one is learned with the latest nuances, he can always create a niche. Like I told at this, before we started the webinar, I was talking to a keynote speaker just like you. He said that one way is that you look forward to a routine process, that is you keep on going on the same highway. But if you want to create your own speed, then you will have to carve out your own niche. So same way, if we believe in going in transnational law and its use of technology, one also has to equip. It's just like if at one point of time, this is a classic example that if you like in the previous webinar, you had a prize that all these processes had been bought for so that there could be video conferencing with the jail and the evidence, but ultimately it is being used for the court purposes. So one, if one is ready to change with the flux of time and it tunes with the changing time, that helps us to create a niche. The lawyers who didn't change on the virtual courts, they said that they would not be able to do it. I feel in today's scenario, because for last good 6 months, we are only on the virtual courts. And those who have not been able to learn the nuances, I think they have lagged behind. So what is your take on that?
See, the video conference has become a new normal.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
New normal.
Yes, sir.
So this has become an acceptance because we have to live with, we have to be realistic with the circumstances.
No, I'm only saying those who haven't been able to change with that, they have lagged behind. Some people have actually believed not to change in the virtual courts, and those who have not been able to do it, it has been difficult. Let's say you have not learned the scanning, they have not learned the virtual courts.
No, you can't survive in this world unless you're prepared to change.
And yes, sir, that's what they said. Old order changes.
Yeah, it's impossible. You can't live without. See, that's what I'm saying. Suppose we are comes to a in reality in terms of with the changes due to the pandemic. We are using, because video conferencing became a new normal. So we were opposing the entry of law firms, foreign law firms, obviously for the reason that they will take away a chunk of work. Now this is one opportunity for you to become a international lawyer. There are plenty of opportunity for lawyers as well. If this has become part of our life, immigration issues, arbitration, online mediation, why should ourselves be confined to the national boundaries? Is it not an opportunity for lawyers as well?
Yes.
Instead of traveling to New York or Paris or London for arbitration, this video conferencing tool would be sufficient for you to hold such sessions elsewhere. Conducting mediation online is possible. There are a lot of immigration issues being faced by the Indians elsewhere. If some opportunities come, they can also represent. So we have to think about a new order for us. The technology is the one platform which can take us to in that level. So instead of very looking in a constricted way of thinking that we are not conversant with the technology, we cannot use it. You look at it in positive and use this opportunity for us to grow.
So, the last question Ram Prasad has posted. When Amazon forest is getting destroyed, it is a matter of concern for the citizens of the world, not just Brazil. Similarly, if the Himalayan mountains and glaciers are destroyed because of so-called development, any person in the world should have a right to question. What is your take on this? These aspects should not be restricted to the national
Absolutely,
states.
absolutely is right. Absolutely right. The climate change is a big issue. It's concerned the global citizen. We have become a global citizen because of carbon emissions. That is the way some of the issues now cropped up in the world scenario. The objections coming from developed countries. No, this would affect the whole world. We become a global citizen now. So it cannot be addressed through a national jurisdiction or domestic jurisdiction. We can only take up through the international forum.
That's true. So we will, there are no more questions on the Facebook as well as on the platform. We will wind up on the parting note, as you said, that we have to tune ourselves with the latest technology, otherwise one becomes obsolete. It is just like what we have. If we sell the gramophone or the cassettes today, will not be able to sell into the market. So he has to be in tune with the latest technology. And tomorrow, our webinar will be on concept of plea in India. And Dr. Muhamed Mustaque, he's an associate professor in Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. So do stay connected with us tomorrow at 5 p.m. As you all know that on weekends, we keep the webinars at 5 or 6 p.m. So do stay connected. And thank you, sir, on behalf of all the participants who watched us on live on the Facebook as well as on this platform, and ultimately those who will watch us on the platform of Beyond Law CLC, where this video will be uploaded. The topic, as we had discussed at the first instance, is a different one, and you rightly said by you that a path which is untreaded has more volumes of business as a professional and more scope of growth, because that is somewhat akin to a virgin area where you have a much scope and there's less crowd. And where there's a less crowd, it is slightly difficult, but eventually one tends to succeed. So thank you, sir, and do stay connected, everyone. Namaskar, and stay healthy and stay blessed on a weekend.